Hi everyone, welcome to your virtual field trip of Paradise Lot. You may recall this is the part of the house that has a very protected microclimate. The asphalt gives off a lot of heat, and the house provides a windbreak to keep the coldest winter winds from coming here, so we can grow things that are maybe a little bit marginal here otherwise. For example, we have a hardy passion fruit species that doesn't grow wild north of Washington, D.C., but here it does really well. And you can see the just absolutely gorgeous flowers on that, really pretty. And actually it does have one fruit on it so far, which we're very excited about. And then we have some fruits over here that are marginal or experimental here as well. This is che fruit, and then we also have over here Chinese jujube, both of which are sort of very much on the edge of where they can survive, but we're hoping that they'll do well for us. Here in the middle of the driveway there's a nice strip of soil where we've been able to grow all kinds of things. This year it's corn, which is done, and some special woolly beans. That's a native bean we're excited about. This is interesting. The city, there are these little strips of land between the sidewalk and the street, and we used to grow annual crops up here, and they did really well, sorghum and cowpeas and stuff, and then the city told us we had to stop, which was a real bummer. But the same year they had a program where they would provide you a free street tree, and they gave us a Juneberry tree. We selected Juneberry from the options, which has edible fruit. So they told us to stop growing food, but then they gave us a free fruit tree. That worked out very nicely for us. And in this particular part of the garden has an extra design challenge. It's right between our driveway and our neighbor's driveway. So it gets lots of snow piled up on top of it from both driveways all winter. Salty snow from road salt, which makes it alkaline, and the snow pile breaks a lot of branches, and then it also gets real dry up here, as you might imagine, and those conditions are actually a lot like the Rocky Mountains, where the soil is alkaline and it's dry in the summer and very snowy in the winter. So what we've been able to grow up here are a whole lot of plants from the Rocky Mountain region. Like these are Clove Currants. They're already fruited and done, and there's Nanking cherry, and we have some Juneberries in here. We did just replant this last year, so it doesn't look so impressive at the moment. But it will soon be back to its former glory. We wanted to replace it with a better kind of Juneberry. Coming into this is a newly planted area for beneficial insects. And if you take a look, you can see lots of activity on top of these garlic chives over here. And as the other plants come along, we'll be in better shape here for the bugs. Now we're on the north side of the house. So it's pretty shady here, and these are pawpaw trees, which have grown very, very tall now. The pawpaw season is just beginning. The real drawback of a virtual field trip is you don't get to eat the fruit. Normally I would be feeding you all fruit right now, I'm sorry to say. But you can see the fruit of pawpaw. It gets pretty big. This variety isn't the biggest, but it's very, very delicious. So the tree has actually quite a bit of fruit in here. When you look around, there's a lot of it hiding in there. Really wonderful fruit, native to the east. Has its challenges. One of the interesting issues with pawpaws is pollination. They here's some more pawpaw fruit. They require. They do best with hand pollination. They will set some fruit without it, but as you can see with it, you get these great big clusters of fruit, and on their own you maybe get, there's one up here, you maybe get like one or two kind of lonely fruits up there. So not as helpful without hand pollination. And for many years we hand pollinated, and then the one year we decided not to. You can see my neighbor's trash cans over here. The neighbor's, the house was empty that year, and there was no trash. Unlike most fruit trees, which are pollinated by honeybees, pawpaws are pollinated by insects that eat rotting flesh and garbage and stuff. Their flowers actually smell a little bit like rotting flesh or like wine or something. So the one year we decided not to hand pollinate was the year that there was no trash next door, so there were no flies around, and we got a lot less pollination. So since then we've been a little more conscientious about doing hand pollination with the pawpaws. And we looked earlier at some polycultures we have in here with like Ramsey's wild leeks. This is the flower stalk of ramps. They come up in the spring, you know, and they leaf out, and then the leaves die back, and then later the flower stalk comes up and sets seed. But at this point you can't even tell the ramps are there, and it's been so dry that the ground beans aren't doing too much in here right now. And this is the root stock of those toothworts I was talking about, which are sort of like our native wasabi, which have also died back at this point. So pawpaws are a great way to take advantage of a shady alley like this. You wouldn't want them too close to the house, and they certainly have their challenges, but we quite love them. And here's one of our nitrogen fixing species. This is bush clover, which is just starting to come into these beautiful flowers. I'll see if I can pull some over for you. Really, really beautiful this time of year. There we go. Just gorgeous flowers, and lots and lots of them. So it goes on and on for a long time with the flowers. Fixes nitrogen. It has edible leaves, although they're not really very impressive, not very good. But it likes some shade, so that's a good nitrogen fixing shrub for us for shade. Lots of interesting ground covers in here as well. This is eventually this area will be spice bush, which is one of our native plants that has a fruit that's used as a spice, sort of like allspice, and it makes a really great cream pie with pawpaw, spice bush, and Carolina allspice, all of which I'm growing in the garden. So I'm hoping to get some fruits on those next year to do the spice with. Let's see. Okay, we've come into the backyard, and this is sort of a place where we hang out in the shade right now. We just redid the kiwi trellis last year with metal because the old one had rotted out. So we don't quite have the shade we would like in here, but it is a very nice shady place to hang out most years. It's really, the kiwis are really, really delicious. There's a few of them on here this year. They're still recovering from being cut back so hard. But you can see a couple of tiny little kiwi fruits up there, which I'm really a fan of. I think they're one of the very best fruits we can grow here in Massachusetts, actually. Big tree right here, right outside my back door, is American persimmon, and you can see there's just really huge amounts of fruit on this thing. Let's see if we sneak under there, maybe you can see it better. There's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of fruit on it. And it's huge, you know, it's a very big tree, just covered in fruit. This one really takes no work at all to care for. It's just easy and delicious and delightful. You have to wait till it's all the way ripe for it to be able to be edible. Otherwise it tastes absolutely awful. But it's a great tree. It's a really big tree, as you can see. It's gotten quite sizable. It's big enough now actually to hold up a hammock, which is great. I've really enjoyed my hammock time out here this year. That's been wonderful. It has some companions. There's a gumi that's fixing nitrogen and has edible fruit. There's a dwarf mulberry over here, which produces a lot of fruit. Then the understory is full of useful and functional plants. So here's Miyoga ginger, which is a relative of true ginger that has edible shoots and flower buds. I ate some of the flower buds today. And there are, let's see, most of this has died back as well. We have beneficial insect plants like this honewort, which has died back but attracts beneficial insects. And then we have nitrogen fixing plants, which have also mostly died back. There is a bunch of a nitrogen fixing astragalus in here, but it looks like it's all died back for the year with the drought. Here's a little bit of the foliage of that astragalus. We have Ground covers like so-called wild ginger, which is not really a ginger. We have edible hosta with edible shoots, and all kinds of other cool things in here, which have, like I said, mostly died back. Here's another one of those ramps with the seed head on it. Just keep throwing those around. Right in this area here, there's a saffron, which should come up soon. That's a fall flowering culinary herb. I'm gonna walk past that out to the pond. You remember the pond from the design. Doesn't look like much right now. Most of the stuff has died back and the raccoon has been in there messing around, but there's some really nice vegetables. There's water celery over here is delicious. There's water lotus and arrowhead in the middle, so I'll be digging up tubers later on to eat. I quite like those. Here's the tool shed. Remember, I was saying how in the shade of the big Norway maple and on terrible soil, something that grows well is a tool shed. Well, here it is. There's the tool shed. And it has a chicken house built onto it as well. So when we come out of the house with food waste, we throw it right in here for the chickens. They seem to be hiding inside at the moment, but we throw it right in there for them. And they come right out and eat it. And meanwhile, we throw some straw and stuff in there. And the result is twice a year we scrape this out and get really good compost. And also we get eggs. I'm going to bring them a piece of kale and see if they'll come out and say hi for all of you. Let's see here. This is just a kale that we broadcast seed of every year, just anywhere there's sort of a crack in the mulch. And they like it. So we'll see if they want to come out and say hi. They might be taking a nap in there, I suppose. Hey girls, I got some kale for you. You want to come out? Let's see if they want to say hi. Very exciting part of the field trip. Okay, maybe they'll be out later. But anyway, this is, oh, here we go. So this is where food waste comes out. Weeds from the garden go in. Surplus leaves from the garden go in. The chickens eat all that stuff and poop on it and scratch around in it. And the mulch we put in there, the bedding we put in there, it all mixes up very nicely and makes beautiful compost for us. It's a really good arrangement. And then we get eggs. And at the end of the lifespan of the chickens, we get to eat some chicken too every once in a while. Here's an annual cropping bed. Doesn't look like much right now. This was watermelons this year. We had lots of watermelons, and there's a few of these fancy French melons left in here. I wonder if this one might be almost ready. I've been picking these too early. With the watermelons, we really figured out how to grow those. So the sort of last vestiges of that crop is in here. And I've already seeded the cover crop, some of which is coming up already. There's clover. That's crimson clover, which will die in the winter. And there's also oats and daikon forage radish in here, all of which will grow nicely this fall once we get a little bit of rain. Up to maybe a foot or so high or more if we're lucky. And then it'll be killed by frost, and what the sort of like dead dry matter that's left behind will be our mulch in here for next year. Here we have a peach tree with its companions. This beautiful nitrogen fixing shrub is an indigo species, indigo for Kirillowii. There's some comfrey to attract beneficial insects and serve as mulch. There's a one of my favorite winter vegetables here called Korean celery, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and some other stuff. But the exciting thing here is I know we were talking in class about squirrels and peaches and how frustrating it is to have to deal with them, and we did a lot of killing squirrels here this year. But a very clever person, my next door neighbor Roxy, figured out that we should put a net up here, and it's worked out really well. It has kept the squirrels off very successfully, or they get a few, but not so much. And then we get to eat a lot more peaches than we would otherwise, which is wonderful. And actually what's also cool about it is they fall, like you can see these ones right here, they fall into the net but they don't land on the ground, so they're clean and easier to pick up and find the good ones to eat out of there. So we're just about done with this peach tree for the year, but we've had a really, really great run of peaches off of this. Whereas the other one, which comes a couple weeks earlier that we did not net, we had like 0% success with. So it wasn't too good. Here's some compost piles. These are just temporary while we were waiting. We bought new chicks this spring and they didn't need a lot of food waste, so we needed more larger size compost operations, and that's what that is, just a temporary composter. In this area, this is kind of newly planted, so it doesn't look like much yet. We redid this whole bed. There's a new mulberry tree in here. We have some gooseberries and some dwarf comfrey as a ground cover. Lots more garlic chives in here, which is really great for beneficial insects. You can see all the different kinds of things flying around on there, or hopefully you can see those. I see bumblebees, I see honeybees, I see hoverflies, I see all kinds of cool beneficial insects in there. And garlic chives in the spring makes a great leafy, oniony crop. And then in the about 1 week ago, you got all these flower buds on here with the long stalk, which are absolutely delicious, like this right here. We would eat like this whole thing, or even longer. Chop that up in whatever you're cooking. It's really good. And then in the fall, again, you get a second crop of leaves. So it's a great low maintenance, multifunctional plant. It does things for the ecosystem, providing pollen, and it provides multiple foods for us over a long season. I'll mention while we're here also, this is all very messy right now, that over here is edible leaf goji. It's one of the shrubs with, it's a shrub that has edible leaves. I'm really fond of it. I've been eating quite a lot of it here. You want to eat these kind of like young tender shoots like this. And this is one of the world's most nutritious vegetables, actually. I think it's second highest for all the world in terms of vitamin E, for example. So very, very nutritious, easily grown shrub. It's a little bit weedy, but it does very nicely for us. I'm very, very fond of it. Here's an interesting one as well. This is walking onion. It's a scallion in the spring, and then it makes these heads of little tiny onions. That falls over and lands on the ground. Maybe we'll put it over here. And then next year that'll grow a whole new set of scallions right there. Or you can break them all off individually if you want to stick them in. But in that way, it kind of walks around the garden, right? It grows up and falls down, and then another one the next year. It stays where it started, but it gradually will colonize a large area that way, which is really fun, really cool. Here's another annual bed. This one we're growing some kale out for seed, and we have some scallions and cilantro that are just about done. And all this very soon will go into its winter cover crop. There's another tree with edible leaves. This one is Chinese tune, which is the second most nutritious vegetable in the whole world, according to my analysis. We just cut it down to 4 feet high every fall, and it resprouts. Didn't do much this year because it was so dry, but we got to eat some of it. It tastes like chicken soup. It's amazing. We'll go into the greenhouse, and then we'll take a look at this other stuff. Okay. Got some potted figs out here. They don't survive the winter, so we bring them into the greenhouse for the winter. But we get, a handful of figs off of them every year. Here's the greenhouse. Okay, I'm going to show you this from outside, actually. So this greenhouse, which we talked about a little bit already, is made out of almost all recycled materials. So you can see the wooden frame in there is made out of used 2x4s. The plastic is new, but the wood frame is used 2x4s. The insulation is all used insulation that was taken out of another building. The frame on the back is an old billboard, an old vinyl billboard is what's covering it up. The door is used. Here's all the insulation in the back. So a typical greenhouse, you have just clear plastic all over, and then you have to use a lot of propane to heat it up. all winter. But in this case, it's extremely well insulated. In the back, you can see there's foam and the cracks and everything, and there's a very thick layer, a couple inches of this heavy-duty insulation in here. And then we have these water tanks, which we fill with water for the winter, and they soak up heat during the day and give it off at night. This is also doubles as a storage area, and it's a construction site at the moment because we're rebuilding our beds over here. So it's a mess again, but so we're able to grow some really fun stuff in here without any heat. So this is a Kalamondan tree. This is a cross between a tangerine and a kumquat. So you can see, here's one down here. Here's a nice fruit on that. They're sour and delicious and delightful. We absolutely love them. Over here is tangerine, and there's actually quite a bit of fruit on there, just starting to ripen up. This is our first ever harvest on that. We're really excited about that. And then over here is a lemon tree. These are Meyer Lemons, which are a cross between an orange and a lemon. So they're sort of extra sweet lemons. They're wonderful. Tree collards behind them growing all the way up into the roof of the greenhouse. That's like a 10-foot tall collard plant right now, and some more collards over here. These are perennial collards that produce really well, sweet, tender greens all winter, and some perennial kale here as well. Tree collards and perennial kale are not hardy in this climate, but in the greenhouse, they're happy. And then over here is where we grow all the winter vegetables. So this will all be, we're redoing the beds, as you can see over there, but this will all be like lettuce, cilantro, scallions, beets, carrots, chard, spinach, tatsoi, things like that. Things that can survive that low light, cool night, winter kind of conditions. We get about 3 frosts a year in here, so it's not that cold, but it's cold enough. And very happy to show you, this is the newest addition, is a little pomegranate tree that we have high hopes for. That's hardy to, you can grow those outdoors like in a warm part of Washington, D.C. So we're not that far off from being able to grow them, and I'm hoping the greenhouse will provide enough of a bonus to be able to do that for us. Here we have a little patch for pollinators and beneficial insects. At the moment, what's really popular in here is mountain mint, which I wish you could smell it. It's an absolutely phenomenal, very strong flavored mint. There's another species of it over here. The insects absolutely love them. And unlike regular mint, they don't run and take over everything all the time. Then we have some Echinacea. All these asters are about to come on. Those are really beautiful. So all through the season, there's something in here flowering to help beneficial insects and pollinators have something to work with. And this shrub right here is, this is false indigo. It's one of our favorite nitrogen fixing plants, fertilizer plants. It's a lovely shrub. It has beautiful flowers. It's great for beneficial insects in addition to providing nectar, but also we're using it as a trellis to grow this perennial, native, edible wild bean, which you can see the beans hanging down right over here from that, which isn't really like a heavy-duty superfood crop or anything yet, but it's really fun to play with, and is something that may be the parent, you know, a couple plant generations down the line of a new truly perennial bean for this climate, which would be just amazing. And it's native. So we have a native bean climbing on a native shrub. Both of them are fixing nitrogen. And then we have this kind of all native planting underneath of all this other beneficial insect plant. So this is a little island of biodiversity within the garden. In contrast to this ground cover over here of all dwarf comfrey, which is not native, and but it fills in the space really well. It doesn't mind dry shade, which is what it gets over here. And it's really great for beneficial insects in spring. It's a preferred egg-laying site for beneficial insects all year long. It's a very dense ground cover, doesn't allow a lot of weeds to come through. And it's a very nice soil builder too. It makes beautiful mulch. I wanted to point out one of my favorite perennial vegetables over here, which is now, and I think it's 7th or 8th year, is Korean celery. We saw one earlier also. Korean celery is really interesting. It's not really celery, but it's in that family. Sombadi is the name in Korean. It's at this point it doesn't look like much, right? It has all these kind of dead-looking flower stalks up here, but if you look at the bottom, you can see this new tender growth starting to come up, and that is what is amazing about this plant. It's not the most delicious thing in the world. It tastes like celery. It's fine. You eat this whole part right here, right? Like the stalk, the leaf. It's fine. It tastes like celery or parsley or something. It's nothing terribly outstanding. But it starts now in September, and it doesn't care about winter at all. So we'll be harvesting off of this plant all the way until Christmas. And then anytime during the winter that there's a little break in the weather, or the snow melts a little bit, that'll start to come up and we can eat it. So in February, we're going to be outside eating that. And then as soon as things melt in the spring, like in March, we're out here eating this every day again. So it's a vegetable for winter that grows outside, and it's perennial, and it attracts beneficial insects. So it will live for many years. It helps with pest control in the garden by attracting beneficial insects that eat other bugs. And it's an edible plant that produces food when there's almost nothing else available outside. That's pretty cool. And just real quick here, you can see behind the shed, that's the persimmon tree. You can see the kiwi trellis after that. Then you can see the peach trees with the net on them over there, the greenhouse, and then this corner we're about to head into over here. This is Chinese chestnut over here, which unfortunately had a rough winter. But is still doing okay. Here's bamboo, which is doing really well. This, believe it or not, died all the way down to the ground 3 years ago, and now it's, goodness, what is that? You know, the tallest one is like a good 20 feet tall in here right now. So we use this for everything around the garden. It's super useful for stakes and all kinds of things, trellising and stuff, any kind of garden construction project. But it can really spread as a weed very aggressively. So there's a trench around it with a heavy-duty plastic in there that keeps it from spreading out into the rest of the garden. Otherwise, it's a real menace. So you have to keep it under control in a garden of this kind of scale. It's evergreen, so it's green all winter long. It's just really, really beautiful stuff. We absolutely love it. Here's more of that Miyoga ginger and some other stuff. This is probably the pollinator for that chestnut will go in here this year. Take a look at this. This is a hazelnut. We don't even have hazelnuts anymore, but squirrels were planting them around the garden, and now they're coming up in here. We've really reached the point where the great majority of our weeds are themselves food plants. This one over here is a nitrogen fixing plant. This is a mimosa from the mimosa that used to live over here. This one that had died. So it's a good position to be in when most of your weeds are food plants. Let's see, okay, coming over here into this back corner. This is a very small area, but it shows what you can do with almost no space at all. Our favorite plant right now, as the peaches are coming out, the Asian pears are coming on. So these are Asian pears or Nashi pears. To save space, we don't have that much room. So this tree, this single trunk, actually has 3 different kinds of pears on it. So this one here is the one that's ripe in September. This is our favorite one, this kind of butterscotchy one. I think it's Chojuro, which is really nice, and you can see all the fruit on that. Absolutely lovely. In the back over here is one that has that fruits in August, so that's mostly done, but has a few fruits left on it. And then over here is the one that we'll be eating in October, which is really lovely. It's more of a pear shape, but it's still crisp and really, really wonderful. I think that one's Korean Giant. So we just love this tree. It doesn't need nearly as much care as some of the other kind of fruits you might grow here, like apples or plums, and it makes loads and loads of fruit. So we're really happy with that. got blueberries in here, raspberries over here. They're mostly done and looking terrible. It's been such a dry year, and we didn't irrigate at all. We just wanted to see what would happen. A new, very, very low spray, very disease resistant apple variety in here. We'll get another one in there to keep it company next year. Grapes, and we had a wonderful year for grapes this year. That's the nice thing about it being so dry, is that you get lots and lots of grapes. You can see the main vine right there going down. Actually, there's a few, somehow there's a little late bunch of grapes on there. These are honeyberries, which were just planted this year, and we really are happy to have them. They're our earliest fruit. They come on even before strawberries. So let's see, coming into this next section, this fluffy stuff here is asparagus, which this is what asparagus looks like this time of year. Behind it is giant miscanthus, which is this amazing grass that I will talk more about when we get closer. And then this gorgeous flower over here is called sochan, and that is a wild edible. It's actually native here. It's a major popular wild edible in the southeast, but people don't eat it so much up here, and eat the leaves. But also it's great for attracting beneficial insects, and it's very, very beautiful. So it's native, it's edible, it attracts beneficial insects. It's huge, which is both good and bad. But as you can see, if we get a little closer, it's got lots of pollinators on it. So it's a very popular item. I don't know if they're too small to see on there, but they're really, it's quite a lovely, quite an impressive plant, really. I didn't know it was going to be this big. It's really huge. Here's another nice piece of it over here. Just really quite a outstanding addition to the garden for us here. Underneath we have some more nitrogen fixing plants. This one here is groundnut, which is a native tuber with edible roots. And then we also have ground bean in here. The difference is ground bean only has 3 leaflets, and the groundnut has more. In this case 5, sometimes 7, sometimes 9, sometimes 3. Ground bean is always 3 leaflets. So that's nitrogen fixation happening in the understory. And you can see all this mulch, all this dead stuff on the ground everywhere. That's part of what makes the soil so healthy here. In fact, we ran some numbers on how much, what percent organic matter we're at. And in this part of the garden here, we're at 9% organic matter from an initial about 1.5 or 2%. So we've come a long way there on our organic matter. And what's really nice about that is our water holding capacity has increased to the point that just in the soil of our garden, the organic matter can hold as much water as a tanker truck. So that's pretty amazing. Okay, part of what we're using for mulch over here, this dead stuff, is Miscanthus Grass, giant Miscanthus, which is this monster over here. By the end of the season, it'll be about 12 or 13 feet tall. It has these very intense, heavy-duty stems, and we use this for mulch. This is a sterile variety. It doesn't make seeds. It can't spread and be a weed, but it's very, very, very dense, as you can see. Very aggressive stuff within its territory. So we use that to grow our own mulch. One of the main things we do is, main things we buy in is mulch. So I have this fantasy that we can produce a lot of our own mulch here, even if not all of it. And as this patch of grass has matured, we're really starting to see that happening here. I'm hoping you can see this beautiful green bee on that flower. Just lovely. Okay. Great elderberry over here. This trellis right here is Chinese yam. We have a bunch of this in the front too. And what's really unique and interesting about this, they're not really ready yet, is it makes these tiny little aerial tubers. It makes a root in the air like a fruit, so we call them yam berries, although they are not berries. You can eat the tubers on this. Underground, they're huge and delicious, but we like these little ones. The idea of this trellis design is, and these are only their second year, so they don't really do much until year 3, then they kind of take off, is we'll be able to just spread a tarp out on the bottom or a sheet and shake it, and all of the little yam berries will fall down. And we'll be able to collect them and eat them because we really, really, really like to eat them. Let me just show, there's a nice little cluster of them forming on here. This is what this yamberry will be like when it gets a little older. This whole thing will be covered with these little tiny berries, which are, again, not really berries. And we'll be able to collect them much more efficiently than we do on the porch. Here's some more of them over here. So we have high hopes that by next year we'll be really harvesting lots and lots and lots of these. Little nursery down here just holding a few plants in place. That'll go out next year. They'll go in the greenhouse. Coming to a close here. These are black raspberries, which we love. There's our elderberry again. All this blue stuff is sea kale, which isn't really a kale. It's in the brassica family, but a different genus. These are a broccoli plant. We eat the broccoli, the stem and the flower. Oh look, and here's a bonus. This is an edible Straferia mushroom. I didn't even know these were growing in here. That's really cool. These are delicious mushrooms. This is a mushroom that grows in wood chips that I showed in a slide the other day. That's great. I wonder if there's any more under there. Not at the moment. All right. Oh yeah, there you go. This one's a little bit too late. We caught these a little too late, but that's nice that they're there. Okay. So sea kale. We love the broccolis. Absolutely love them. And it has two advantages over regular broccoli and one disadvantage. The disadvantage is the broccolis are a lot smaller than regular broccoli. They taste very, very good though. The advantages are these plants were grown from seed in the year 2000, so they are now celebrating their 20th anniversary. They're older than many of you in this class. That's a big deal. They also produce like the first week of May, and regular broccoli would be more like July, so it's much earlier in the season, which is great. And they are immune to most of the pests and diseases that affect other brassicas, so that's a very desirable thing as well. Almost through here. Let's see, this purple stuff is purple shiso. That's a culinary herb from Japan that my neighbor enjoys. Oh, I don't know. We could go on and on and on here, but this milkweed, it doesn't look like much right now. It's all beat up and old, but this is one of our very favorite vegetables. Again, one of the most nutritious in the world. It's native. It's great for pollinators. It's the host plant for the monarch butterfly. And you can eat the shoots and the broccoli and the flowers and the young fruits. It's just a really amazing multi-purpose native plant that should be part of every permaculture garden in this part of the world, as far as I'm concerned. Here's the trampoline. That's important for kids, right? And here's a place to have fires, a little fire pit and stuff. It doesn't have to all be garden. There's human uses that are necessary as well. Maybe I'll just do you a quick shot from here. You can see this kind of beneficial insect planting over here. Then that mulch grass, which is so dramatic. A bunch of berries in here. There's our trellis with the yam berries that we saw. Greenhouse with the bamboo behind it. Peaches, more peaches, annual bed, chicken house, tool shed, mulberry, persimmon, kiwis, pond, to get a sense of how things are. And then I want to take you back over here. Here's some firewood that we'll be burning. This is leftover stuff from old furniture. Trying to put everything to use. Back in here, we have some shiitake logs that my neighbor Roxy made last year, and we've been eating a bunch of shiitakes off these, which are just absolutely delightful. So these are certain kinds of logs you can inoculate with mushrooms, and they grow very nicely. So we've cut a whole lot off of here. They don't look so impressive at the moment because we've been eating a lot of them, but they're just most wonderful thing. Good fresh mushrooms are an absolute delight, so we've been really pleased with those. And one of the things we found is that when you combine mushrooms and eggs and vegetables and fruit, there's a lot you can make with those things. You can really build a diet around those things quite a bit. So that's very nice. These are various kinds of, this is cucumber berry, which is a little wild, tiny perennial cucumber that we like to eat. That's a native one. And we've got a little rain garden over here that helps to collect some of the rain from the roof that comes down all the way down. Here's more Chinese yam. This is where that passion fruit was that we started with. Oh, and look at this beautiful, enormous bee on this passion fruit right here. We have found that the passion flowers here, often the bees will sleep on them at night, and then it makes them sleepy. Like people take the flower tea of this as a, like to relax them and make them sleepy and stuff. So we often will actually pet the bees on there. I won't do it this time of day because that's a very big bee. I'm not sure it's effective this time of day, but we have often stood around petting the bees on these things, which is really fun to do. Let's see, so that's the garden. And you can see that we have made some real success in our goal of producing a garden where almost everything is food, where there is a really active restoration in terms of there's better soil, there are more plants, there is more pollen, there is more water than there was before. And I hope you can also tell it's totally a work in progress that really needs some work. Always needs some work and always needs some love and can always be improved. Anybody who tells you permaculture is about sort of like only low maintenance and you never have to work again and you get to be in your hammock all the time, that's not been our experience at all here. But it's really fun, and we get to eat really well, and it's a lot less work than other kinds of gardening you could be doing in the same place, and really lots of food. So I hope you enjoyed your virtual field trip. I'm sorry I don't get to feed you all fruit, but I hope we'll get to see some of you out here next year. Maybe we can schedule a makeup field trip for the spring and you all can try some things then. Thanks, everybody.